The HistoryNetwork.org podcast. This episode is brought to you by lynda.com and some news of a great offer from them coming up later in the episode. Season 18, Episode 4, Operation Foxley, the Assassination of Hitler by Paul Bernardi. Paul works in IT for a major financial institution, but has long held a love of all things historical. Paul studied history at Leeds University in the late 1980s, graduating with a master's degree in Anglo-Saxon history. Paul is also a published author. His debut novel, To the Devil His Due, which this podcast is based on, was published in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon in the UK, US and Europe earlier this year. On the 23rd of July 1998, the Public Records Office published a number of files that had previously been held in secret in respect of activities planned and undertaken by the Special Operations Executive, or SOE, in Western Europe during the Second World War. Of itself, this was a fairly unremarkable event and might well have passed by relatively unnoticed, but for the fact that one of these files related to a plan codenamed Operation Foxley. This had been put together by SOE's Section X, which had responsibility for operations relating to Germany and Austria. What made Operation Foxley so interesting was the fact that it described a hitherto unknown and unsuspected plan to assassinate Adolf Hitler at the height of the conflict. Although this operation was never put into practice, it nonetheless captures the imagination about the minds of the people who were tasked with pulling the plan together. This podcast therefore describes the thinking and the work that went into the planning of Operation Foxley from the time permission was first given to look into such a plan in 1941 up to the point in early 1945 when it was finally abandoned. Attempts on Hitler's life were nothing new. There had already been over 30 separate attempts before the war even started, the most famous of all being the July bomb plot in 1944, when on the 20th of that month a conspiracy headed by Colonel Count Klaus von Stauffenberg put into action a plan to overthrow the Nazi government by planting a bomb that was timed to go off during a military briefing at Hitler's Rastenburg HQ, known as the Wolf's Lair. Hitler miraculously survived the explosion, largely due to good fortune. The bomb, which was in a briefcase, had been moved out of the way behind one of the thick oaken legs of a huge table, thereby shielding the Führer from the worst of the blast. A few of the other attempts had similarly come remarkably close to success. On the 8th of November 1939, a left-wing activist called Georg Elser planted a bomb in the Bürgerbrau beer hall in Berlin, where Hitler made his annual speech to the Nazi Party veterans, a time and location that was therefore guaranteed. Unfortunately for Elsa, Hitler started earlier than normal, spoke more briefly than usual, and therefore left 13 minutes before the bomb exploded, killing 8 and wounding a further 60. On another occasion, a Colonel Henning von Tresckow asked a staff officer who was travelling on Hitler's personal aircraft to deliver what he said was a bottle of spirits to a friend back at Army HQ. The parcel actually held 2 mines on a 30-minute fuse. The mines failed to explode and had to be hastily retrieved before the plot could be discovered. It was found that the fuse had worked, but had failed to trigger the explosive, most likely due to the cold temperatures up at altitude on the plane. So could the British do any better? The file released by the Public Records Office is essentially a briefing document which details the information that the SOE planners had managed to gather, together with descriptions of a number of possible assassination options, of which one is recommended as having the best chance of success. Much of the information held within the file had come from detailed interrogations of German prisoners of war, some of whom had served as members of the Führer's personal bodyguard, and therefore had access to good quality intelligence. This information was key to the planning of the operation and the identification of a number of possible locations for an assassination attempt. It provided first-hand accounts of Hitler's movements, his routine, and key locations that he was known to frequent. The file discusses a number of possible locations, but focuses mostly around one primary site, namely the Berghof, an estate that began life as an alpine retreat that Hitler had transformed into a major formal residence. It was well known to the Allies, as it was often used to entertain foreign dignitaries, not least of whom was Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, who visited in September 1938. Situated near the town of Berchtesgaden in southern Bavaria, the Berghof was deep in the heart of Nazi Germany, a fact which did not, however, deter the SOE planners. The file also contains significant amounts of detail about the estate, its various buildings, of which there were many, and the surrounding area. There was also an abundance of useful information about the positioning of sentries and various patrol routes around the estate. All such data would, of course, have to be verified in person once any agents had been deployed, not least because it was necessarily somewhat dated, depending on how long ago the interrogated prisoners had been stationed there. With the Berghof being identified as a suitable site for the mission, thoughts then turned to how they would actually manage to achieve the objective. The first two options, which were subsequently rejected, involved either attacking Hitler's motor convoy on its way into or out of the estate, possibly using a Piat anti-tank gun, or alternatively sending in a unit of special forces by parachute to overwhelm the defenders. The former was too impractical and carried little guarantee of success, whereas the latter had too many unknowns, such as weather conditions, Hitler's whereabouts within the estate, and how to get the men out afterwards, to have any chance of success. The third option, and the one that was determined to have the greatest chance of success, was to drop a couple of agents, disguised in the uniform of the German Mountain Corps, the Gebirgsjäger, armed with sniper rifles. These men would then have to wait in situ for Hitler's arrival at the Berghof, then move into a position where they could take him out. Of all the options considered, this seemed to have been the most suitable, not least because it was also the simplest. Like any machine, the fewer the numbers of moving parts, the less chance there is of something going wrong. From the interrogations carried out on former members of Hitler's personal bodyguard, SOE knew a fair amount about Hitler's daily routine when he was based at the Berghof. Firstly, and very importantly, they knew that his presence was indicated by the fact that the Nazi flag was flown from a flagpole outside of the front of the main house. This flag could be seen from a cafe down in the town of Berchtesgaden. They also knew that most days, when in residence, Hitler took a walk from the estate to a nearby tea room called the Muslanerkopf, where he took a breakfast of milk and toast. This walk took place shortly after 10 o'clock each morning and lasted 15 to 20 minutes. SOE knew the route of this walk, and they also knew from aerial reconnaissance photographs of the area that it took the Führer to within a couple of 100 yards of the tree line outside the estate, a position where a sniper might be able to hide in waiting. Furthermore, there would be a good chance of a clear shot, as Hitler hated to be accompanied on his walk, so there would be no guards around him. True, he was sometimes joined by party officials or visiting generals, but this was a chance they would have to take. The route was visible to a number of sentries posted around the estate, including one that was located at the tea room itself, but they would all be over 500 yards away when the shot was taken, and would thus be powerless to prevent the assassination. So, if SOE had all this information, why didn't it actually happen? There were a number of reasons why the mission was never put into effect. On the level of basic practicality, whilst SOE did have a wealth of information, much of it was out of date or based on the testimony of captured German soldiers and was therefore open to question about its reliability. Did they really have enough credible intelligence that would allow them to mount an operation of this magnitude? Could they really risk the lives of their agents on the basis of such intelligence? In addition, it was questionable whether they would ever find any suitable and willing candidates to undertake the mission. Initially, much thought was given to whether disgruntled German POWs might be enticed to do the job. This would have had the advantage of using a native German speaker to get close to the Führer, but could they really be trusted to carry out the mission once out of the SOE's direct control? There was also an even more fanciful suggestion, quickly discarded, that Rudolf Hess might be sent back to Germany, having been brainwashed to assassinate Hitler. I kid you not. The simple fact was that they needed an Allied operative who was not only a good marksman, but also someone with great physical and mental fortitude, who would be able to stay hidden deep inside the Third Reich for as long as it took for Hitler to arrive at the Berghof. Being fluent in German would also be a significant bonus. The chances of finding someone with the right qualities and skills who would also accept a mission which had a near zero chance of survival was never going to be easy. The files make it clear that no such realistic candidate had been identified by the time that the plans were shelved early in 1945. Aside from the practical considerations, there were also significant political issues that needed to be resolved. Firstly, there were those that still clung to the concepts of gentlemanly warfare, more suited to a bygone age. These individuals felt that it would be beneath us to stoop to such a low level as to carry out a clandestine assassination of an enemy head of state, thereby ignoring the SOE-sponsored assassination of Reinhard Heydrich in Prague in 1942. On a more objective level, there was serious debate as to whether removing Hitler would best serve the Allied war objectives. On the most optimistic side, it was hoped that the death of Hitler would result in the immediate cessation of hostilities. Such an argument carried a great deal of weight. It would mean that thousands, if not millions, of lives could be saved by this action. If this was the case, then it had to be worth the risks. With hindsight, we know that the war was almost at an end when much of the planning for this mission was taking place, mid to late 1944. But no one at the time could be sure of how much longer it would go on, or what new weapons Nazi Germany might bring to bear. The hope that the death of Hitler might lead to his replacement with a more rational and conciliatory government with whom negotiations could be started was a big factor in support of the mission. Equally, the fact that things were going pretty well for the Allies was also an argument against undertaking the assassination. The Western Front had been opened following D-Day, which had led to the removal of some units from the east, which in turn allowed the Russians to push the Nazis further and further back towards their own borders. Whilst it is true to say that no one could foresee exactly when the war might end, there were clear signs that the balance had swung clearly in favour of the Allies by this time. Furthermore, part of the reason why things had been going so badly for the German army was perceived to be down to Hitler himself. Lieutenant Colonel Ronald Thornley, the head of Section X in SOE, was a staunch opponent for the assassination. He reasoned, "As a strategist, Hitler has been of the greatest possible assistance to the British war effort, although the military situation has been temporarily stabilised on the Western Front. Hitler is still in a position to override completely the soundest of military appreciations and thereby help the Allied cause enormously." As can be seen from this quote, there was a considerable support for the idea that not assassinating Hitler might be a better option than doing so. Removing Hitler from the scene may well result in someone far more effective militarily taking over, perpetuating the war immeasurably. In addition to this, there was also the fear that to kill him would hand the Germans a massive propaganda boost, especially if the assassination could be tied back to the Allies. The potential boost to morale resulting from the martyrdom of the Führer could be enough to rally the troops and civilian population to new levels of resistance. Many therefore saw it as far better to defeat Germany in the field rather than resort to other more underhand methods of winning the war. It would be better in the long run for Germany to witness the decline and inevitable defeat of their leader as he blundered from one catastrophe to another than to have him cut down now. Were this to happen, it could give rise to future resentment and the question as to whether Germany would have been victorious if Hitler had lived. In the end, the whole debate proved to be theoretical. The planning was not sufficiently complete to allow for an effective operation to be mounted, nor, more critically, had a suitable candidate to undertake the mission emerged, though there was a suggestion that by March 1945 a name had come to light. However, by that time Hitler was firmly ensconced in Berlin, never to leave again, and a mere 6 weeks away from taking his own life. Now there's some great further reading for you on Operation Foxley if you fancy it, and with news of that as well as what's coming up in episode 5 in a moment, I want to first of all mention our great sponsors for this episode at lynda.com, who are offering you a fantastic deal to be able to access their whole learning library for absolutely free for 10 days, even new content that is added during your free subscription. So come on, the New Year's resolutions you made must be waning by now, So why not fill the void by learning something you've always meant to, and challenge yourself to learn something new with a free 10-day trial to lynda.com. In case you've never heard of lynda.com before, that's lynda.com, and to get the free trial just add /historynet. So that's lynda.com/historynet. lynda.com we absolutely love, and millions of people worldwide love it too. lynda.com has over 3,000 courses on topics like web development, photography, visual design and business, as well as software training like Excel, WordPress and Photoshop. All of their courses are taught by experts, and new courses are added to the site every week. Whether you want to set new financial goals, find a work-life balance, invest in a new hobby, ask your boss for a raise, find a new job, or improve upon your current job skills in 2015, lynda.com has something for everyone. So sign up for your free 10-day trial today by visiting lynda.com/historynet, and you'll get unlimited access to every course on lynda.com, access to view tutorials on tablets and iPhone and Android mobile devices, and access to new courses added every week. Now, being just the two of us here at the History Network, we do everything from recording and editing the podcast to maintaining the website, which needs graphics and some basic coding. Neither of us are a master at any of these things. We started the podcast thinking we could do audio, but the rest we've had to learn on the job, and this is where lynda.com comes into its own. When we first got started back in 2005, Angus went through the Dreamweaver tutorials. If you find a section you know all about, you can skip it, or if there's a section you want to specifically know about, you can go straight to it. And the beauty is that if you need a refresher, then you can just watch a particular step, lesson or tutorial as many times as you like. The Ancient Warfare magazine podcast we produce is another great example of how we've used lynda.com. Some of you may or may not know we produce a video version of the Ancient Warfare magazine podcast and publish it to YouTube. The title sequence for this was created using Adobe After Effects. Not being professional special effect people, this was another skill we've had to learn on the job. Creating all those layers and how to blend them together, it's all there on lynda.com. So we're delighted to be able to offer you this amazing offer from lynda.com to you, our listeners. 10 days access to the total of their learning for free, even the new ones added during your free trial period. And all you have to do is use the link lynda.com/historynet. Now that's lynda.com/historynet. We really hope you'll go and take a look and help us out by using that link. The link again, lynda.com/historynet. So as I mentioned, if you're interested in more on Operation Foxley, then we would very much recommend the following books: Kill the Führer by Dennis Rigdon and Operation Foxley, The British Plan to Kill Hitler, introduced by Mark Seaman. And finally, of course, don't forget to look out for the novel based on these plans, which takes as its premise the suggestion that the plans were actually put into action. To the Devil His Due by the writer of this podcast, Paul Bernardi, and this is available to order as a paperback and ebook from Amazon. We've got links to all of those at the website. And coming up in episode 5, we're delighted that Lindsay Powell returns, having penned an awesome episode on Marcus Agrippa. So if ancient history is more your bag, then resident expert on the Ancient Warfare magazine podcast, Lindsay Powell's script is sure to be just your thing. And you know, even if you think that ancient history isn't so much to your liking, you can never fail to learn something new and eye-opening when Lindsay's pen has been at work. So get ready for Lindsay Powell's script on Marcus Agrippa in a couple of weeks' time. Now, would you like to write a script on a topic we've not covered? Why not drop us a line? Some of our most popular episodes have been written by listeners. You can support us in a number of other ways as well. You can make a donation using the donate button at the website. You can buy an older season from our store. These files are entire seasons, chaptered into the episodes, and cost just £2 each. You can follow us on Twitter. We are at History Network on there, and you can like our Facebook page. Just search for The History Network on Facebook to find us there. And please remember the fantastic 10-day offer on lynda.com. That's lynda.com/historynet, or there's a link direct to that offer at the website, thehistorynetwork.org. So do get in touch if you've got ideas for podcasts, would like to write a script for us, or want to bring us up on an error or point of contention. Whatever it is, we love to hear from you. And it's info@thehistorynetwork.org to be able to contact us that way. You've been listening to the historynetwork.org podcast, written by Paul Bernardi, read by Nick Barker.